Now, you might recall a few months ago we had a look at a realistic DX-66, which was a small portable multi-band receiver, and I recall being quite favourably disposed towards it, except initially I thought it was going to be a bit of a cheap knockoff thing and not very good given the reputation I'd sort of attached to the brand over the years. So having been more impressed with that than I'd expected to be, I thought I'd seek out something else from the same stable. I have to say, you do have to be very careful searching for realistic things on eBay. I got some results which I can't unsee now. I was truly shocked, I can tell you. But I did eventually, with a bit of filtering and lying down in a darkened room for a while, come up with this one. This is the DX-66. I think it's from the sort of 80s era. It's labelled as Air Shortwave Monitor, as you can see here. And it does indeed have an air band and 3 shortwave bands. It also has an FM and AM band, AM being medium wave. There's no long wave, but as we've observed in recent videos, that's not likely to matter for much longer. You wouldn't say it's absolutely quality finish in a way. Handle here is solid plastic moulded into it. It doesn't fold down or push down or anything like that. It does feel, in a bit way, the plastics and things do feel a bit low rent, but then again I would say it's still got a fairly solid build quality, even though it's not quite as pretty in some ways as some of the other radios you might see of the era. In terms of the facilities, it's got volume and tone controls here, tuning knob, and the fine tuning, which is actually just a gearing of this, which means it works on any waveband. A lot of the ones that have fine tuning only operate electrically on the shortwave. This one actually operates on all of them, which is quite good. It's got, for changing bands, it's got this thing which looks a bit like a turret tuner, but I'm guessing it's not really. It's just a rotary switch that it looks similar to the old turret tuner selection that we saw on that Russian radio a while ago, but it certainly doesn't feel like it's got all of that mechanism on the back of it. And it's got a little light thing for illuminating the scale, sort of momentary thing you can press here. Not working at the moment because I haven't turned it on. If I turn it on, it's a bit intermittent. A lot of the, particularly the band selector, is a bit iffy.
It is an interesting question, I think. When I say we, sorry, when I
Okay, look, Sarah, it is
The taste of the unexpected. Surprising as modern Japan. That's right.
So reasonable AM reception there. I'm going to switch it on to FM.
a little bit like sarcastic in that little bit. Oh, really? Like I've been awake.
I haven't got the aerial extended at the moment, so I'm not expecting anything brilliant, but it was okay on reasonably close local stations.
The whole house creaks every time we increase the heat or put in more wood. So it's kind of a living, breathing thing. The whole
that tone control is a bit iffy.
Kind of expands and contracts with.
It needs looking at.
It's a beautiful. It sounds like a beautiful place to be.
Overall, I think the sound's not that bad. The sensitivity on FM isn't that great. I could try it with the external aerial and see if that makes any difference. So I've got a fairly weak signal there. I'm just going to go in the aerial socket.
I'm paying you. You should be delivering this. Offering more customer service then. Invest in our systems and simplifying our processes and procedures.
Yes, it does look like the external aerial has an effect there, so that's promising as well. Other than that, from socketry point of view, there's just a 1/4-inch headphone socket on the side. I'm guessing it's mono. I'm not sure what it would do with modern headphones. In terms of power, it can either take 6 C cells, which it's got, 4 C cells, which it's got in at the moment. There's also a captive mains lead, but it has a the old European 2-pin style connector on it. if you take this off, there's the sort of thing for it to go through the battery compartment there. And if you take this off, I think it's supposed to stow away in there, but I can't see how it's ever going to fit unless you do some very clever sort of origami on it. I think what I might do is just put a 3-pin IEC socket in. I think that will fit in there, and you'd still be able to close the compartment. You'd still be able to use it without this wire flapping in the breeze. Anyway, what I think we'll do is we'll get it apart, have a look, and see what we can do to clean up the controls and things. Okay, let's try and get it apart. So I'm guessing I can see some posi drive screws or crosshead screws around here. So I'm just going to try taking those out. Yeah, so that's all apart now. Let's have a look, see what we've got. As I suspected, it's not... Oh, that's where the wire for the aerial comes off there, so that's actually quite handy. And in fact, the one of the power wires does, and one of them is soldered, which is annoying. Oh no, actually, yeah, that comes off the board end, so I can actually get this apart fairly easily. And what happened here? That bit, that screw which was holding it in, was holding it onto a pillar on the back of the thingy here, which is broken off, so I might be able to glue that back on, but there's enough screws to hold it together anyway, so I'm not too bothered by that. As I suspected, it's not like a turret tuner as such. It's just moving a multi-way switch around, which we can probably clean. We can almost certainly clean that up. And then there's like a little tuning cord string which is moving that indicator there at the front, that little yellow indicator that shows you what band you're on. Everything looks fairly modern, really. Just looking for semiconductors and things. There's an IC there which I'm guessing is audio. They put quite a lot of this black wax everywhere. Now it's quite common to wax RF stages of radios, or was in those days, to stop components moving about and being microphonic. Also the sort of spacing of these coils, particularly in like the FM sections, is always very critical, and if they moved about too much it would go off tune. But what all this really thick black wax is, I'm not sure. It doesn't feel like we have to replace any of these components, fortunately, so I don't have to get that hideous stuff off. Yeah, and the controls are easy to get at for cleaning, so what I'm going to do first is clean these controls up and see how far we get with that, because that's quite a lot of the work done, really, once we've done that, I think. The other thing I might look at is the bulbs. Now, I can't see how you get it to the light bulbs. It might be that we can take this out and possibly replace those two incandescent lights with LEDs, because they're a bit dim at the moment, and it'd be nice to get something a little brighter out of them. But how much dismantling would be required to do that, and whether it's worth it, I'm not sure. But first of all, I'll do some cleanups and see how far that gets us.
Traditional around about this time. 3 absolute belters from all genres, from all decades, are curated by our triple curator. No one knows who they are, what they do.
Oh, it was a disgrace. So many. 3-course meal for every meal. 3 course honest every meal. You've never seen anything.
Well, having got it apart, they certainly don't intend to make it easy for you to change these bulbs. I thought maybe they'd just pull out, having got to this stage. But you can see that little tacked on circuit board there. Now they're connected to that, or at least one of them is, and then the other one is they're not the sort of bulbs that plug into sockets. They're sort of bulbs that have wire ends that solder onto things, which is really annoying. So these are soldered through that directly onto the board, and then the other end, presumably there's tracks underneath, that bulb solders straight into there. Now it does look to me like we can detach that somehow. There's a couple of little clips, and I think I can get that out. And if I take those two solder joints out, I think I can pull that whole thing out, and then maybe I can have a go at putting a couple of LEDs in instead with the appropriate dropper resistors, which I'm sure we could get onto that board. Right, so I didn't reuse this board in the end because it didn't really seem to fit or be necessary. It did come out after a struggle, and it's not damaged or anything, but I didn't see any point in reusing it. It was just harder to get it back in, and I didn't want to have to take this dial out because it's got a lot of the tuning mechanism on it, and I certainly didn't fancy doing restringing this complicated tuning cord, although the diagram is in the service manual for it, but it's still quite messy. And so I got the LEDs. They were actually a pretty good fit. Standard size LED was a pretty good fit in the hole, so you didn't need that carrier anyway. So I've got those in there now and got them wired up. And yeah, I think it's time to put it back together. So I've got the thing back together, got the dial lights in place for the LEDs. For the mains situation, I shortened the cable a bit and put a 3-pin IEC connector on the end of it. And that then, because it's fairly short, it will sort of tuck away into the back of the battery compartment. If you're using it on batteries, you can't really see it, so it's not hanging around like it was before. And the sound now is pretty good now everything's been cleaned up.
But if you want, go for the older varieties, really.
And it is, you're talking about growing hollies from...
And overall I've found that the build and the general finish of the set has grown on me over the day or so that I've been working on it. I think it's actually got a feeling of being quite solid without being flashy. A bit like Skodas used to be after they became Volkswagens, but before they started trying to be Audis. And who doesn't love a bit of scale illumination? Paradise by the dashboard light indeed. Catch you on the next Killer Cycle.